Hit subscribe if you dare, because once you hear this case, you'll never look at the world the same way again. The night it began, the rain hit the city like it was trying to wash something away, something ugly, something hidden. At 2:14 a.m., the first call came through to the Midtown Police Department. A jogger, out earlier than usual, reported something strange in the old industrial yard off Linton Avenue. Not a body. Not an attack. Something far more confusing. By the time detectives Avery Locke and Jonah Red arrived, the streetlights flickered as if the storm had knocked loose the wiring. The whole neighborhood felt hollow, like a place abandoned by accident. The industrial yard wasn't on any active property list, no owners, no tenants, no workers. Just fences and warehouses that should have been empty. But nothing about what they found was empty. The rain soaked the ground, turning dust into mud, and right in the middle of that mud was a trail of footprints. Not just one set, 3. All different sizes. All heading in the same direction. And next to them was something that made Avery stop mid-step. A phone. Screen cracked. Still warm. Jonah picked it up carefully with gloves. No password, he said, eyebrows raised. The moment he tapped the screen awake, it buzzed. One new message, received only minutes earlier. A single sentence. Don't follow me. Avery exhaled slowly. The message came from an unknown number, blocked, scrambled, untraceable. It felt like a warning and a threat at the same time. But who was warning who? The strange part was the jogger hadn't seen a person, only a flash of movement behind the chain-link fence and the eerie glow of the phone screen lighting up in the rain. That meant whoever dropped the phone was still close. The detectives followed the muddy prints toward Warehouse 19, a gray, windowless building that hadn't been opened in years. The air smelled like rust and chemicals, and the metal sliding door was slightly off its rail, as if forced open recently. Jonah looked at Avery. Ready? She nodded, and together they pushed the heavy door aside. The inside was dark. Their flashlights sliced through layers of dust floating in the air. Everything seemed untouched, until Avery noticed something on the far wall. A handprint. Not bloody. Not smeared. But drawn in the dust, intentionally. Fingers stretched wide, almost a symbol. Below it was a message written in uneven strokes. Find the truth. Jonah whispered, this is staged. He was right. It felt like someone wanted them here, wanted them to discover exactly this. But why? As they moved deeper, Avery's light hit the floor and froze. A backpack. New. Dry. Out of place. And inside it, a map of the city with 5 locations circled. A burner phone. 3 keycards from different hotels. A note that read, start where it ended. A puzzle. A breadcrumb trail. A game someone was forcing them to play. But the strangest feeling wasn't what they found, it was what they didn't find. There were no signs of struggle, no abandoned tools, no broken locks, no signs that anyone lived or worked here. Everything looked planted. Everything except for the second set of footprints, which were deeper, like the person was carrying something heavy. Or someone heavy. Avery squinted at the prints, following them toward a closed office door. The window was covered in grime, impossible to see through. Jonah reached for the handle. It was ice cold. He pushed it open. Inside, the office was empty except for a metal chair in the center of the room and a small security monitor on the table. Old wires ran along the wall, plugged into an outdated CCTV system. The monitor flickered. Lightning cracked outside. And then the screen stabilized. It showed live footage, not from this building, but from somewhere else. Somewhere outdoors. Somewhere forested. A road. A parked car. Headlights off. Someone's streaming this to us, Avery said quietly. Jonah leaned closer. Wait. That plate number? Isn't that? Avery's phone buzzed violently in her pocket. When she pulled it out, her breath caught. A message from an unknown sender. You're late. Jonah's phone buzzed next. His message said, hurry. How did they get both their numbers? How did they know they were here? How long had they been watching? The monitor flickered again, zooming slowly toward the parked car as if guided by an unseen hand. The passenger door was cracked open. Something was on the seat, something small, metallic. Avery felt her heartbeat thudding in her ears. Jonah, is that a badge? He leaned in. Squinted. And then his expression changed completely. That's my badge number. The air collapsed around them. This wasn't a random crime. This wasn't a confused trail. This wasn't an accident. Someone was sending them a message, a personal one. Avery grabbed the backpack, flipped the map over, and saw something she hadn't noticed before, faint handwriting beneath the printed city layout. A date. Tomorrow's date. And next to it, a time. 2:14 a.m. The same moment the anonymous message arrived tonight. Jonah's jaw tightened. They planned all of this. Avery nodded, adrenaline rising in her chest. They're leading us into something. And they want us to follow the clues. The lights overhead flickered again. The monitor glitched. And then finally, the camera zoomed all the way into the car seat, stopping on a scrap of paper beneath the badge. 2 words. Find me. Avery felt the temperature drop. Jonah stepped back, gripping the table. What kind of person leaves this many clues? He whispered. Avery swallowed hard. The kind who wants to be found. Lightning cracked again, the monitor cut to static. And then, from somewhere inside the warehouse, behind the darkness and metal beams, a single sound echoed. A door closing. Avery and Jonah spun toward the noise. But when they reached the hallway and opened the locked maintenance room, what they found inside changed everything. The maintenance room door creaked open, and Avery's flashlight cut through layers of dust and hanging cobwebs. At first glance, it appeared empty, just metal shelves, old paint cans, and a cracked concrete floor. But then Jonah's beam hit something leaning against the far wall. A suitcase. Black. Clean. New. Completely out of place in a room untouched for years. Avery approached slowly, pulse tight in her throat. Jonah steadied himself beside her. The suitcase wasn't locked. It opened easily. Inside was no clothing, no tools, nothing normal. Instead, a stack of photographs. Dozens of them. All crisp, recent, and perfectly arranged. Avery lifted the first photo. It was a picture of her. Taken yesterday. Standing outside her apartment. Jonah grabbed one from the middle of the stack, a picture of him entering a cafe 2 days ago. Another showed him at a traffic light. Another at the precinct. Another walking his dog. Someone had been following them for weeks. Avery exhaled shakily. They're not just watching this case, they're watching us. Jonah nodded grimly. This is personal. Way too personal. But beneath the photographs was something even stranger, a folded sheet of printer paper, addressed to both of them. Avery opened it. Detectives Locke and read, "You're almost there. Don't stop now." At the bottom was a single symbol, the same handprint they'd found on the warehouse wall. Jonah stepped back, shaking his head. This is a setup. Someone is staging every clue just to keep us chasing their trail. Avery closed the suitcase and straightened. Then we figure out where the next clue leads before they control the next move. She pulled out the map from the backpack and laid it on a shelf. The 5 circled locations stretched across the city, random, scattered, not connected on paper. But then Jonah noticed something. Every circle lines up with a CCTV blind spot. Avery blinked. You're saying someone mapped out the places where they can move around without being seen? Jonah nodded. Exactly. And the warehouse we're in? It's sitting directly between 2 blind spots. Whoever we're chasing doesn't want to disappear, they want to be invisible. Avery's phone buzzed again. A new message. Location 3. Hurry. She and Jonah stared at each other. The sender wasn't guessing, they knew exactly what they were doing, and exactly what Avery and Jonah would do next. No more time to analyze. No more time to hesitate. They rushed out of the warehouse and back into the rain-slicked street. The storm had passed, leaving the air thick and heavy. The city felt like it was holding its breath. Location 3 was an abandoned parking structure on Riverside Boulevard, 5 levels, long condemned, slated for demolition but delayed for years. The kind of place no one visited unless they had something to hide. They arrived in minutes. The structure loomed above them, concrete cracked and vines crawling along the rails. Every step inside echoed like the building was hollowing in on itself. Halfway up the ramp, Avery spotted something taped to a pillar. A key. Attached to a note. 2 words, written in the same uneven hand as before. Keep going. Jonah scanned the area. This is too easy. They want us to find this. Avery pocketed the key. Which means we're doing exactly what they want, but we don't have a choice. They continued upward, their footfalls bouncing off the walls. On the 3rd level, they saw it, a car, dark blue, parked neatly in the center of the floor as if placed there with intention. Jonah raised his flashlight. Same car from the live stream? Avery walked around it slowly. Same model. Same color. Same dent on the rear bumper. But the license plate was different. A decoy? A duplicate? A warning? Or a trap? Jonah tried the doors, locked. Avery pulled out the key from the pillar. It slid into the lock perfectly. She opened the driver's door. Inside, there was no driver, no passenger, no traces of struggle. Just order. Everything clean. Everything arranged. Too arranged. In the middle console lay a small metal tin. Jonah opened it. Inside was a folded slip of paper. Avery read it aloud. Look behind you. Both detectives spun instantly, flashlights cutting across the darkness. No one was there. The lot was silent. Avery's phone buzzed again. Another message. Not that far behind you. She lifted her light and pointed it toward the far end of the level. There, barely visible in the shadows, a figure stood. Not moving. Not approaching. Just standing, watching. Jonah tensed. Police. Show us your hands. But the figure remained perfectly still, as if carved from the shadows. Avery stepped forward, her nerves rising like static. Jonah, stay close. The two moved slowly, methodically, closing the distance between them and the figure. Their footsteps echoed louder, sharper. But as they reached the halfway point, Avery realized something chilling. The figure wasn't watching them. The figure wasn't anything. It was a mannequin. A mannequin wearing a black hoodie? With a phone duct taped to its hand. Jonah exhaled. They're messing with us. Avery pulled the phone from the mannequin's grip. The screen lit up instantly, showing a single message on the lock screen. Almost there. At that exact moment, a loud thud echoed from the level above them. Avery stiffened. Jonah raised his flashlight. Another thud. Then another. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Someone was up there. Someone who wasn't a mannequin. Someone who had been waiting for Avery and Jonah to arrive. Jonah whispered, "They're leading us to level 4. Avery nodded once. "Then we're going." They ascended the ramp, flashlights sweeping every corner. The air grew colder, heavier. A faint humming echoed above, like a generator struggling to stay alive. As they reached level 4, the humming grew louder. Then they saw it, in the center of the floor, placed exactly under the single flickering light. A television. Plugged into a portable power pack. Turned on. Playing static. Avery approached it cautiously. "This feels wrong." Jonah squinted. "There's something under it." They lifted the TV slightly. And underneath? Was a single USB drive. Avery picked it up. Jonah whispered, "Whatever's on that thing, it's what they want us to see." Avery nodded. "And whatever's on it, changes this case." But before they could move, Avery's phone buzzed again. One new message. "You're running out of time." The text was followed by a GPS coordinate. And beneath it, one terrifying sentence. "This ends tonight." The morning the truth finally began to surface, Detective Elena Marquez walked into the precinct with a look that told everyone she had slept no more than a handful of hours. The board behind her had turned into an overwhelming collage: photographs, timestamps, receipts, fingerprints, excavated documents, witness notes, a chaotic tapestry that made the case look more like a maze than an investigation. But something had changed overnight. Something had snapped into focus. Elena placed her coffee on the desk, opened her laptop, and replayed the last interview with Nora Brandt. The gestures, the pauses, the forced confusion, all the things that had seemed like grief suddenly felt like choreography. But that wasn't enough. Gut feelings didn't close cases. Logic did. And something logical had finally appeared. The stray digital footprints. A series of emails recovered from a cloud backup had been flagged at 4:17 a.m. They weren't dramatic, but they gave a trail, subtle, careful, almost invisible. Someone had tried to delete them months ago. Not spam, not promotions, not obvious communication. Instead, they were drafts, emails never sent, written and rewritten, all saved automatically by the system. Every draft was addressed to one person, Iden Hale. The same man whose name came up when Lucas disappeared. The same man Nora insisted she had not spoken to in 10 years. But the timestamps showed she was communicating with him regularly. Elena leaned in as she read the final unsent draft. "I can't keep lying. They are asking questions again. If this gets out, it won't just be my life that collapses, yours will too. What we did, it's only a matter of time before someone sees the pattern." The word pattern lingered in the room like a cold breeze. What pattern? What had they done? And why did Lucas end up in the middle of it? Before Elena could finish reading, Lieutenant Monroe stepped into the room. "You need to see something," he said. He led her to the tech office, where a digital map display projected across the wall. Several markers blinked in slow pulses. A tech analyst gestured toward the map. "We cross-referenced Iden Hale's old financial activity with Nora's deleted draft messages. There's overlap, same locations, same dates. But here's the catch. Lucas had recently run a background check inquiry on Iden's name 2 weeks before he vanished." Elena blinked. Lucas was investigating Iden? It looks that way. The tech analyst clicked a button. A new layer appeared on the map, this time highlighting property records. Iden Hale owned land. Not in the city. Not in the state. A quiet piece of property 3 hours from Ridgefield. Purchased under a shell company. Never mentioned by Nora. Never searched. Monroe turned to Elena. "You ready to take a drive?" The road leading to the property was long and forested, the kind of place only locals or secluded owners would ever have reason to visit. The cabin at the end of the narrow path looked abandoned, shutters faded, porch steps slightly warped, roof edges worn down by winter after winter. Elena stepped out of the car and scanned the area. The silence felt dense, like the trees themselves were holding their breath. There was no sign of movement, no sign of anyone living there. But in cases like this, the absence of noise didn't bring comfort, it magnified tension. Monroe nodded to the forensic team. "Check the perimeter." But Elena walked straight toward the porch. Something felt off. She didn't know what, she just felt it. The front door wasn't locked. It creaked open with a long, tired groan. Inside, the cabin was sparse. Bare walls. Old furniture. Dust on everything, except one thing. An office chair. Clean. New. Out of place. Elena's pulse ticked faster. She walked around it and then noticed marks on the wooden floor, faint dragging lines. Something heavy had been moved recently. More than once. "Monroe," she called quietly. He stepped in, eyes narrowing. "This is new." She noticed something else, a thin strip of blue tape on the floor, perfectly aligned, like a marker. A measuring point. A recording point. Her breath caught. The cabin wasn't abandoned. It was used. And recently. For something organized. Something planned. Then a buzzing sound broke the stillness. Elena startled, turning as Monroe followed the noise to a small device mounted near the doorway. A motion-activated camera, blinking red. Someone had been watching the cabin. Someone who knew they were here. "Trace it," Monroe ordered the tech agent. "Now." The agent hooked a cable into the small port beneath the device. A loading bar appeared on his tablet. Then a screen popped up, a recent feed. Footage. The chair. The cabin. A shadow moving across the lens, recorded just 2 days prior. Not enough to identify a face. But enough to show the person's height. Their build. Their routine. And enough to confirm, someone had been here after Lucas disappeared. But that wasn't the most important part. As the final clip loaded, Elena's stomach dropped. The camera caught a figure carrying something, a small, dark metal box, placing it on the floor, opening it, and removing documents. Documents that looked like contracts, signatures, financial records, and a set of printed photographs. Elena froze. The corner of one photograph was visible in the video, enough to recognize Lucas leaning against his car. He'd been here. Or his photo had. "Stop," Elena said. "Reverse that." The tech agent reversed the footage. Elena leaned forward, her pulse racing. "Zoom in," she whispered. The frame sharpened slightly. Enough to see the box. Enough to see the initials engraved on it. E.H. Iden Hale. But the clip ended abruptly. The next segment showed the same shadowed figure closing the box, but this time, placing a second envelope inside. A message written on the front. A message Elena read aloud. "If you found this place, you're already too late." The room fell quiet. Monroe exhaled slowly. "So he knew we were closing in." Or, Elena murmured, "someone wanted us to think he knew." She picked up the box, careful not to disturb any prints. When she lifted it, a folded sheet underneath fluttered to the floor. Elena crouched and opened it. Inside was a list. Dates. Locations. Names. All tied to one company, the same shell corporation Iden had used to buy the property. A company that Nora Brandt had secretly co-signed for 10 years prior, before she and Lucas ever met. And the most recent name on the list was Lucas. Elena felt her chest tighten. He stumbled into something bigger than a personal motive. Monroe nodded grimly. This wasn't a domestic case. It wasn't jealousy. It wasn't a love triangle. It was a cover-up, Elena said. A major one. A long-running one. And they had only scraped the surface. The sun was setting as they returned to town. The evidence was being catalogued. The box was sealed. The digital files were being decrypted. And the investigation, rather than wrapping up, had exploded into a new direction, broader, deeper, more structured. Elena stared at the evidence board, realizing that every thread she once thought was random now pointed to a single network, operations hidden beneath everyday lives, masked by partnerships, contracts, and silent agreements. Lucas had uncovered it. And he wasn't the only one who had disappeared before the trail went cold. Monroe stepped beside her. "This isn't ending anytime soon." "No," Elena said quietly. "It's just beginning." The precinct lights dimmed as night settled in, casting long shadows across the board. For the first time since the investigation started, the case felt less like a puzzle and more like a doorway. A doorway that had finally opened, not revealing answers, but revealing how many lies had been hiding behind them. Elena folded her arms, staring at the board one last time before leaving for the night. "We found the pattern," she whispered to herself. "Now we need to find the person who created it." But as she stepped outside into the cold evening air, Her phone vibrated. A blocked number. She answered cautiously. A voice, calm, low, and unfamiliar, spoke just 5 words. "You're looking in the wrong place." The call disconnected immediately. Elena froze. The investigation had just taken a darker turn. And whoever was behind it wasn't done. Not even close. If you thought this story was intense, the next one is even more twisted. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss what comes next.